Well, in probably breaking an NDA somehow,
Sure.
we've got voice actor Tony Todd went to Twitter, I think it was yesterday or today, and was like, it was in reply to somebody. So it wasn't even like he was just tweeting this out, but somebody was asking about Spider-Man 2, the video game. And Tony Todd plays Venom in Spider-Man 2, the upcoming game, and said, and I can't quote it because he's now deleted the tweet, but he said, yeah, it looks like Spider-Man 2 is coming out in September is what I've heard, with a big push happening in August when the commercials will start to drop. And everybody was like, are you allowed to say that? Yeah. And so,
right.
And so he left it up for hours and hours and hours. And then I don't know if he usually does this, but went on this crazy Twitter dump of just like music and retweets and quote tweeting people and all this stuff and all this music. Smokey Robinson, Al Green, Arthur Conley. Like it's crazy the amount of tweets he's put up since deleting that tweet about Spider-Man 2 coming out.
Try and bury it in the timeline where it was, I guess.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so what do you think? Do we take this at face value? Do we say, yeah, September is the month for Spider-Man 2?
You know, I mean, it's not that crazy to me because I feel like they had already confirmed it was going to be in the fall, and I want to say the original one came. Yeah, so I maybe it's just me, but I was expecting September, October, somewhere around there. That's just where my head was anyway. So I even if I was following this guy and had read it, I don't think I'd have been like, oh my gosh, I'd have just been like, yeah, checks out. I wouldn't have been super shocked by it.
I kind of go just because they keep the voice actors out of the loop in so much.
Yeah.
I would be I wouldn't put a ton of stock into it just because he may have no idea if internally they've been like, we got to push this back 4 months, something like that.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't a huge thing to me, but seeing the watching if higher ups are freaking out, then maybe he's onto something.
Yeah, and the whole fact that he deleted it and buried it with a bunch of other stuff does lend some credence to the fact that that might be the timeline they're actually shooting for. Because, like you said, who knows if in July they're like, oh man, some of these things we thought were going to come together last minute or not, so we're going to need more time. You never know.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, I've always thought, there's no way they're going to have this completely done by the fall, right? So, I mean, if they do have a release date, that's great. My guess is it's going to be pushed back. But like you said, if the execs are kind of freaking out, then maybe they botched an announcement or something. I don't know.
So what, outside of just past history with various studios, like what makes you feel like September is so unlikely?
Because everything gets pushed back. Everything's getting pushed back.
But that's the only reason is just because everything gets pushed back. So if no matter when it was, when there's a date, you think it's going to be back, or like what's your thing?
I think because this is so anticipated that they're. What I've seen in the past is something that's highly anticipated, either that it's starting to get rushed, or inevitably they just need more time. And you know me, I'm all about take your time, do it right, don't mess it up, just. Make sure that, you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted and come out with a complete good game. And so I don't know. I have this thing that the past couple that we've been really excited about have always been pushed back, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So here's I
don't know. We'll see.
Here's what I think and why I feel like it's completely doable. Again, anything can happen. You never know if everything's going to come down to the wire at the last minute. But Spider-Man, the first one, came out a really long time ago. And yes, they did do the PS5 remake or whatever you want to call that, the remaster or whatever, that also released PC. And they did do some tweaking to that, to the way that the game is presented, and the Peter Parker's face was different. And then they did do Miles, but Miles was such a smaller experience and so much you could tell built off of the backs of everything they had created for the first one that I feel like they probably had the vast majority of this stuff good and ready to go and tightened up, and they probably started on 2 the minute 1 was done. I don't know. When you look at it from that timeline of when 2013 or when the Spider-Man 1 came out to when the second one's coming out, it feels like the right amount of time. You're like, yep, this fall feels right to me. But I'm with you that, I mean, these days in particular, any game just feels like it could get pushed. But if you pull out Miles Morales, which I know is not completely fair to do, but considering that it was such a smaller game overall and had a lot of its DNA built off of the foundation made in the first one. But if you pull that one out, the timeline feels right that this fall feels exactly when it would probably be.
And you would think that this DNA is not going to be that much different than what they already had going on, right? You know what I'm saying? Like Miles was released for the PS5, so it's, you know, it's built up for the PS5. They had a couple DLCs for the first Spider-Man too as well that they kind of sprinkled in there. And so I don't know, man. I think, I'm not saying that he's definitely right, but considering that the last Spider-Man came out in September, maybe it was a good month for them to release, and maybe he knows. Now, I wouldn't think he would know about, like, and commercials are hitting in August, and that's when they're going to, that to me
weird.
Is like the little
that
extra stuff that feels like, why would you know that part?
Right.
But, you know, maybe he's asking a lot of questions because he's excited, and, you know, he's playing Venom, and that's a big deal, and so he wants to be up on it and know what's going on, you know. So maybe they did tell him.
And to kind of piggyback off of the point Tim was making, to even underscore its validity even more, that perspective, this is a big deal for PlayStation. Like, this is one of their heavy hitters already, even though there's only been 2 iterations in it. So I absolutely feel like they would want this to hit hard and be as bug free as possible and all that kind of stuff. So if there's any like little bugs in the machine or something, I could see them. It would not surprise me if they were like, all right, no, we're pushing a month. We're going to make sure this is as clean as it can be, kind of thing. So that it's very possible.